Hey, Avery.
Hi.
Hold on, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay. 3 seconds. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm all right. I don't have any symptoms, so
Well, that's good.
yeah.
Well, we'll do our best. This is recording, so for some reason, um, if you can't keep up or something happens, it will be recorded, and then I'll send you the link after, okay, if you need it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So hopefully we won't have to do this too many times, right?
Oh, yeah. It's not fun.
All right. What we're gonna discuss, as I said, Monday, we're gonna, oh, so speaking of that, if you still have to be off at campus on Monday, because we're gonna do the Bhagavad Gita, what I might do is turn the laptop around, because remember I said we sort of have a discussion about that rather than a lecture, so we'll try to see how that works, okay?
Okay. I actually left my books at home because I was sort of trying, or not, I mean at Piedmont.
Yeah,
So I will try to figure something out.
well, yeah, okay, well, I might have a link to a PDF copy or something.
Okay, that would be perfect.
Anyway, just so you know, because Monday will sort of be a discussion time rather than, so, but I might be able to come up with a link to that, so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So speaking of the Bhagavad Gita, we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to look at, as I said, Vishnu, Shiva, and Devi today, those three gods. And these three gods have sort of become the prominent gods in Hinduism. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the festivals, and we'll try to go from there. All right. As I had said, on Wednesday, the Bhagavad Gita is a small part of the epic, the Mahabharata, that larger sort of epic story. And the Bhagavad Gita has become so influential in Hinduism that it now really is like a standalone book, even though it's part of that larger epic. And so people all over the world will read that and use it and talk about it. And as I mentioned, it's a discourse between Krishna, who's an avatar for the god Vishnu, or an incarnation of the god Vishnu, okay? And Vishnu's devotee, which is the Prince Arjuna. And and how the Bhagavad Gita came into existence is there was a scribe who listened in to the conversation between Krishna and Prince Arjuna, okay? And this scribe wrote down the entire conversation. That's the legend of how the Bhagavad Gita came into existence, okay? So the belief is that therefore it's sort of a direct recording or account of Vishnu's conversation with the prince through the person of Krishna, okay? Side note to that, so if you're Jewish or Christian, you know that the belief is that the Old Testament and the New Testament are the inspired word of God, right? Meaning that the persons that wrote down the books that we have and what we call the Bible were inspired words from God, okay? So in that sense, it's different than what the Bhagavad Gita is, because the Bhagavad Gita was a conversation between God and a devotee and someone listening to the conversation and writing it down. The way we talk about the Christian and Jewish Bible is that it was these persons hearing God speak to them and writing it down, okay? If you're Muslim, the belief there is that this is, the Quran is the actual word of God and that Muhammad transcribed it, okay? Now you notice when I said about the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament and the New Testament, I said the inspired word of God. So for most people, Jewish and Christians, they don't believe that the persons that wrote the Bible were just transcribing what God said. They believe that they heard God's voice and then wrote down what they understood God saying, okay? When you talk about the Quran, Muslims believe that Muhammad was simply a scribe. And the story is that Muhammad was illiterate and he was still able to write down the Quran. And so the belief is that he literally just took the word of Allah and wrote it down, okay? So just so you understand that these are sort of different ways that people talk about transmission of sacred texts, okay? All right. So what the Bhagavad Gita is attempting to do is uniting sort of major theological strands in Hinduism. So the first thing the Bhagavad Gita says, and this is that all ways of salvation are equally valid. And this will be important for a couple of reasons. One, when we look at these different gods that we're going to talk about, each of these gods have specific roles and how you have rituals to them, how Hindus interact with them and so forth, okay? But the Bhagavad Gita makes the claim that the different practices and ways towards salvation are equal, okay? So one way to salvation is not better than another. All right. And the first way of salvation is the way of enlightenment. And there's basically three ways to salvation. And one of them is the way of enlightenment. And that is called Jnana Marga. And Jnana is spelled Jnana. And Marga is Marga. So that's one way to salvation. And remember, the Bhagavad Gita says that all of these are equal, okay? The next way to salvation is the way of what they call altruistic, righteous action and progression through the caste system. So this way is a twofold manner. You engage in good deeds, okay? And you move your way up the caste system. And we'll talk more about the caste system next week.
Way of altruistic / righteous.
So altruistic, righteous action. So doing good deeds is another way to say that. So doing kind things for people and progression up the caste system. And that type of salvation is called niskama. And kama here is Kama. And then, so nishkama, karma, marga. So in nishkama is Nishkama, karma. And then the final way is the way of meditation. And we'll talk more about some of these in a moment. Oh, excuse me, and the way of devotion, that's the last one.
Good way of devotion.
Well, the way of meditation and the way of devotion. There's, so what happens is some of these ways get put together, and the way of devotion is called bhakti. And we'll talk more about bhakti, because bhakti has become the most popular form of a way to achieve salvation. But anyway, back to the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita says that none of these ways are better than the other. All of them are equal to one another. And the reason that's important is because in Hinduism historically, is depending on what type of Hinduism you practiced, people said one way of one path to salvation was the best way, okay? And the Bhagavad Gita wants to refute that. All right.
So all the Bhagavad Gita is just Krishna and his prince talking the whole time.
The entire time it's their discussion. So, you know, you're going to read 4 chapters of it, and there's, 16 chapters. So there's about 100 pages of their conversation. And that's what it is, a dialogue back and forth. And a lot of it is Krishna explaining to our Prince Arjuna what he should be doing and why he should be doing it. And then Prince Arjuna replying back, dude, I really am not comfortable with that, or that's not what I want to do, or, and eventually you can imagine who wins out in the dialogue.
Krishna.
Right. So our Prince Arjuna really realizes that, he has to fulfill his duty. But this is why, not only is this why this book becomes so important, simply because of this famous dialogue, but also because it breaks new ground in sort of Hinduism, in where that it elevates duty to a new level in a way that had not been elevated at the same level before. All right. So, 3 gods. So the theology found in the Bhagavad Gita saw ultimate reality in the single God of Vishnu, okay? So, and that's why Krishna, the incarnation of Vishnu, figures so importantly. But there was a broader movement within Hinduism that saw several other gods as all-powerful as well. And so eventually Hinduism, makes this shift where Vishnu is still a significant god, but these other gods become equally important. And so these all-powerful gods exist outside of the karmic world. In fact, they control the karmic world. And why this is important is because the gods existing outside of the karmic world means that they don't end up in this life cycle, okay, samsara, but they're the ones that control the karmic world. And so your devotion or worship to them plays a central role in how karma gets defined or sorted out. And what's important about this is prior to this advent, it was even believed that gods were subject to the karmic world, okay? So this is a new sort of movement that's developing in Hinduism, where the gods stand outside of the karmic sort of order. And your devotion to a particular god helps work your way towards liberation or moksha, okay? So in a way, if you think about it, these gods are offering you a pathway towards moksha or liberation, okay? And they help you along that process. All right, so the 3 gods that we're gonna look at this morning is Vishnu, Shiva, and Devi. All right.
These are the three things, right?
Today, they're the sort of main gods that many Hindus worship or pray to. Okay, and we'll see how this works out in a moment. And if you remember, I said early on that many Sanskrit words are compound words, and so the devotees or the followers of Vishnu, Shiva, and Devi, some part of the name that they attribute to themselves have the word Vishnu, Shiva, or Devi in them. So, you know, if you were to meet someone and they were to say, you know, whatever, you would hear the word Devi or Vishnu or Shiva in it, and then you would know, okay, that the type of Hinduism they practice is they're devoted primarily to that god, okay? And we'll see how that works out more fully in a bit. Okay. Of these three gods, Vishnu is the most popular, followed by Shiva and then Devi. And Vishnu is typically depicted as what they call the dark god. And that's because his skin is either blue or black. And so when you see pictures or paintings or statues or murals or whatever, and you see a dark god, you can almost be certain that that's Vishnu, okay? Vishnu has 4 arms. And the 4 arms indicate great power. And often in front of, there's a giant cobra with the hood fully extended. So you'll see Vishnu with these 4 arms, and often in front of Vishnu is a cobra with the head fully like flared out. And then in each of the 4 hands, Vishnu holds distinct objects. A mace, do you know what a mace is?
It's like a weapon, like
Yeah, exactly. And so, so it's sort of a staff that has a weapon staff that has like some kind of like protruding elements or something to it, okay? A disc, a conch, and a lotus. So when a conch is a shell, it's a large snail in the Caribbean and South Florida and stuff. You find conch in the water, and so when the conch, when the snail that's inside the conch dies, you see these shells being used, and it's a horn. So Vishnu will blow the conch. So the mace and the disc are weapons. So Vishnu uses the mace and the disc to engage in battle. And not only does Vishnu use these weapons to engage in battle, they're also weapons against ignorance. So there's the implication that Vishnu is not just simply battling demons. Vishnu is also battling against ignorance, and therefore to promote wisdom, okay?
Is there any certain way that these, like any certain hand that it's supposed to go in, or any certain way that these objects are?
You would, I don't know that there, I mean, there may be a particular way that they are supposed to be held. I don't know that there's a particular way. But one of the things that's important to, and this addresses your question, is that because Hinduism has this notion that statues, paintings, any kind of object that represents the god actually has the god is present in that object. So one of the things is that Hinduism is a very visual faith compared to some other ones. And so art is very important. So what you would see is when someone makes a statue or a painting or whatever, you're going to see these things present, and maybe it might be in various ways, but you're always going to see them there being held, okay? Because one of the things that's important is that you want to recreate that to make sure that Vishnu is actually present in the object, okay? And we'll explain about Krishna in a moment, because Krishna is one of the avatars of Vishnu. Okay, so the conch shell is a tool of creation. So when Vishnu blows the conch, the sound waves that come out from the conch form the Maya of the world. So Vishnu creates the what we perceive to be here present in the world through the blowing of the conch. And the lotus is symbolic of salvation that Vishnu grants. So, and the reason is that lotuses come up from the mud, but open into a pure and beautiful flower. Have any of you ever seen a lotus flower? Or seen? So they grow up out of the mud, and they have the pad, and then on top is the flower, and it's this incredibly beautiful flower, okay? This is why, have you ever heard of the lotus position for meditation? This is why the lotus position is so important in meditation, because the lotus position represents this emergence from the mud into this beautiful object or flower, okay? So it's another way to sort of physically manifest salvation. So followers of Vishnu are called Vishnavas.
So it's kind of like how the cross represents salvation.
Exactly. Exactly. So that would, the lotus flower would represent that. It's exactly right. So Vishnavas, and they often identify themselves by painting Vishnu's mark on their foreheads, which are 3 vertical lines connected at the bottom by a shorter line. So if you ever see a Hindu person and they have 3 vertical lines painted on their forehead and then a short one at the bottom going across, connecting it, you can know that that person is likely a follower of Vishnu.
You said 3 vertical lines?
3 vertical lines and then 1 shorter line connecting them. So 1 short horizontal. And what the reason they do that is they believe that's Vishnu's footprint. So in effect, they believe Vishnu has implanted his footprint on their forehead. I mean, obviously they know that they have put it there themselves, but that's symbolically what's going on. So how do they see Vishnu? Vishnu is envisioned as the great God who supports the order of the world and protects and sustains all life. So Vishnu is seen as a sustainer of life. And he's also seen as the supreme soul or a cosmic soul. And so therefore, Vishnu is in everything that exists or lives. Vishnu is part of that. And like any god that's in that process, the god participates both in the creation and destruction of things. So one of the things that's important to understand about Hinduism is that, you know, Vishnu is a life-sustaining force, but also that life-sustaining force, because it's part of all living beings, is also part of the destruction of life as well. So when the world dissolves, eventually Hinduism like many religious traditions, believe that the present world will disappear, will go away. Vishnu will remain, okay? And then as you can imagine, now Vishnu is going to remain at the bottom of the sea as a cobra sleeping, all coiled up. And then what's going to happen? Then, have you ever heard this, a Hindu person or a Buddhist person praying Om? That meditation, that sound Om, is going to radiate through the universe, and it's going to cause Vishnu to spout a navel, and then creation will start again. And the lotus will form, and then creation starts over again. All right. Unlike in other religious traditions, Hinduism has, their gods have consorts. So the Greek gods have consorts, right? So there are male and female gods, and they have babies and so forth. Hinduism has the same kind of belief system, that there are consorts.
So Vishnu is responsible for like the Ragnarok of Hinduism?
Yes. And the consort of Vishnu is Lakshmi. And Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth and domestic prosperity. And like Vishnu, has 4 arms as well.
You spell that?
Lakshmi. And Lakshmi is often depicted standing on a lotus flower, dressed very gloriously. So if you ever see a female image standing on a lotus flower dressed in very elaborate robes with jewels and bedazzled, that's probably Lakshmi, okay? And obviously having 4 arms. And there's royal elephants. And the royal, and there are gold coins being given to her by her worshipers. So, and it's believed that Lakshmi embodies the sort of creative power for Vishnu.
So she represents wealth and prosperity?
Exactly. And so sometimes you'll see paintings, and Vishnu will have an emblem of her, which is an endless knot, and that's it, painted on his chest, and he wears a precious jewel there. And it's believed that Lakshmi resides inside that precious jewel, okay, on his chest. And so both of them have animals that carry them to the human world. Lakshmi flies on an owl. And Vishnu is the sunbird Garuda. So Garuda is a divine eagle. So in the 2 most popular avatars for Vishnu are Rama and Krishna. And so an avatar is basically a human incarnation of these gods. Okay. Everybody good on Vishnu? All right. Shiva. All right. And devotees of Shiva are called Shaivas. And there's about 200 or 300 million devotees of Shiva. Now, you think, okay, that's a lot. Guess what? That's only about half the size of the devotees of Vishnu. So there are about 200 or 300 million Hindu folks that follow Shiva. There are about 400 to 600 million Hindu folks that follow Vishnu. So Shiva, unlike Vishnu, is envisioned as a fierce deity who destroys and creates through violent acts. So Shiva is a warrior deity, and Shiva creates and destroys through acts of violence, so engaging in war activities. And Shiva is a god who sometimes haunts cremation grounds. So think of the angel of death, right? The grim reaper. Shiva sometimes is portrayed in that kind of environment, haunting cremation grounds. And you can see smeared with the ashes of the dead, which make Shiva look like, you know, if any of you ever seen, you know, the ghost of Christmas past and these kind of things. So think of that. Think of this sort of God who's sort of fierce looking and got ashes smeared on its face and walking around through a cremation grounds or a cemetery, if you will. That's the way Shiva is sometimes portrayed. And his hair is a mass of dark coiled matted locks. So think of this sort of God with the hair sort of really matted and coiled, tightly coiled. His throat is blue from having swallowed poison. And he wears a snake around his neck, and he girds his loins with a lion's skin. He sounds like a really pleasing dude, doesn't he? So, and he also goes by the name Howler and Skullbearer. And sometimes he appears as a demonic looking untouchable accompanied by a dog. And dogs in Hinduism are impure animals. So whenever you see a dog in art in Hinduism, immediately know that that dog represents impurity and something not good. So even though we have this idea of Hinduism, you know, they love elephants and they love cows and this kind of stuff, dogs are seen as impure. So you wouldn't find Hindus owning dogs as pets. So Shiva really represents a paradox. Shiva is the paradox who represents both life and death, loving and terrifying, approachable and fearsome, male and female. So Shiva can be male and female, playful, destructive, erotic, ascetic. So Shiva and people that are devotees of Shiva see Shiva as embodying this sort of what you might say in Chinese culture, the yin and yang of the world. Shiva represents both of these sort of life forces, okay? And can be presented in these ways. And because of that, Shiva is created of opposing forces that can't be unified in our world. So Shiva is always sort of is somehow in our world causing mayhem, either destruction or life, okay? Because the power can't be unified. And so sometimes because Shiva has both male and female, sometimes Shiva is sort of represented androgynously, but not in the way that we talk about androgynous, where the person sort of just has the appearance of either being male or female. In this, half of the left side is female and the right side is male. So you would see a painting or a picture of Shiva, and the left side of Shiva would be female and the right side would be male, okay? And then aside from having that snake around their neck, Shiva wears a necklace made from the heads of the past creator gods that he decapitated. Remember, Shiva's a warrior god. And so, have any of you ever seen the movie or the show Highlander, where you have to decapitate the other immortal and then you get their power? Well, Shiva, does battle with the other creator gods. And when Shiva is victorious, the way Shiva displays his victory is by decapitating and then wearing the head of the god he's decapitated around his neck.
How big is he?
Yeah,
Sure, the heads are pretty big. How many does he have?
can be any number. So it's not a fixed, that wouldn't be a fixed number. And so Shiva is also depicted as the Lord of animals. And because Shiva is both a creator and a destroyer, Shiva both cares for the animals and kills the animals. So it's not a one or the other. So, the most popular image of this god is a black pillar set in a shallow dish with a spout on one side, which is the yoni. And that is Shiva's creative and destructive energy envisioned in the Shiva Shakti. So the Shiva Shakti is both the male and female creative power. And sometimes the pillar has 4 faces on top of it, indicating Shiva's omniscience, meaning that Shiva is all-knowing. But often Shiva, the pillar is smooth and uncarved, allowing devotees to experience Shiva's creative potential. So one of the things is that unlike Vishnu that has Krishna and Rama, Shiva is more, having this pillar and having this more androgynous kind of representation around him, is that Shiva is really about about life force. That's the sort of main focus of Shiva. Everybody with me so far? All right, Devi. And Devi is the division of the female divine. So Devi is a goddess. So as I pointed out, there are goddesses that are thought to be divine counterparts or complements to their gods. So Lakshmi, right? That's a goddess who's the divine counterpart to Vishnu. And those persons provide the devotee with access to divine attributes such as wealth and so forth and so on. And one of the most important goddesses in India is the river Ganges. So if you didn't know this, the Ganges is considered a holy river, but it is a goddess. And it descends from the earth, from the Himalayas. And it's thought to be the celestial Milky Way. So the belief is that the Ganges River is a pathway to the Milky Way, to the heavens, okay?
And wait, so Devi represents the Ganges?
So Devi is sort of, you'll see in a minute how Devi is like this god. So the manifestations, Devi, the Ganges is one manifestation of that goddess Devi, okay? Thanks for asking the clarification on that. And then, because there are all kinds of tributaries and so forth that feed the Ganges River, the whole of India itself is seen as a goddess as well. So, and devotees of the goddess Devi call themselves Shaktas. And there's about 50 million of them. And again, now the reason they call themselves Shaktas is because they envision Devi as creative power or Shakti of the universe. So Devi is really seen as, it's a female emanation of God, but Devi is seen as this creative power from the universe, okay, which is Shakti. And so they are devotees of Devi, call themselves Shaktas. So one of the avatars of Devi is Chamunda. And Chamunda is the goddess of the feminine and is the most prominent mother in a group of 7 mothers. So one of the important things to understand about Devi is that Devi, not only being a goddess, Devi also is presented as this sort of mother of not just people, but really the universal mother, okay? So like a godmother or a mother of the universe. But the most popular manifestation of Devi is Durga. And Durga, you've seen this before. And as soon as I start to explain to you what Durga is a goddess as well. No. But Durga is beautifully clad and has 10 arms. So if you've ever seen a 10-armed goddess, that's the goddess Durga. And she rides a lion. So if you ever see a 10-armed, beautifully attired goddess with 10 arms riding a lion, you know that's Durga. So how Durga came into existence is one of the great myth stories of Hinduism. And Durga's origin and sort of story begins with the same sort of familiar story of the defeat of the gods at the hands of demons. So one of the important things to understand about Hinduism, almost all of Hinduism, regardless of what type of practice or who they follow, Hinduism has this belief that there's an eternal battle between good gods and bad gods going on, okay? And in this case, the good gods are defeated by the demons. And the principal demon is the buffalo demon. And the buffalo demon rises to superpower in the cosmos, okay? And Vishnu and Shiva are angry because Vishnu and Shiva cannot defeat the buffalo god. So Vishnu and Shiva combine their anger to create the goddess Durga. And so Durga beheads the buffalo god and restores order to the universe. And so in late September or early October, Durga's victory is celebrated. And so it's a 9-day celebration. And so one of the things that takes place during this 9 days is there's partying going. And at the end of the festival, goats and buffaloes are slaughtered in the honor of Durga.
No, it's October.
Late September, early October. Any questions? I think I'll stop there and we'll. So, any questions about what we covered today? I know it was a lot, and I'm sorry about that, but it's important because these three gods are really the most important gods in Hinduism today.
I read a book where it was about Hinduism.
Uh-huh.
The main characters had to get help from Durga to achieve their quest.
Yeah. So even today, one of the things is that these festivals, and again, when someone sees, Devi or sees Durga as in a painting or art, people will call upon Durga to help them when they face battles or challenges in their own life. So even in real life stories today, people are still calling upon these gods to do this kind of stuff.
I feel like they got this like magical, like how they give the elephants like statues.
Uh-huh.
One of those that was able to like kind of harness the power of Durga.
Yep. Cool. All right, Avery, take care of yourself. All right, thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.